Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Quantum Leap Season 2, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, so first and foremost, this new leap that Ben is in has taken him to the first day, the start of the LA riots. And obviously there's been a hologram shift and now it's actually magic, which last episode I was like, oh yeah, magic's never kind of taken reins before. It's like, that's not true, because a whole squad helped him in the season finale, so like everyone kind of tag teamed into that situation. But obviously like Ian has helped with at least I think 2 total fully helped with 2 total leaps, and I think Jin's done 1. So like I said, they're probably going to be alternating throughout the episodes, especially after this one, which I think this is a great episode. And for one, it's a powerful story. It's a very sad story in the regards, there's a hopefulness to it, but it is just that sad aspect of history that you realize that history does repeat itself over and over again. Something that was prevalent in the 70s is still prevalent in the 90s, which is still prevalent even to this day, because there's so much, because I think that's what makes this episode powerful. But I think it is powerful because it's like important story to like write today too, because there are so many parallels, like I said, the same thing just happening over and over again in history. Like as Magic kind of talks about, like, yeah, like a lot of these flames kind of dim down, but the systemic issues like ignite the powder keg all over again until we deal with those systemic issues, until they're properly dealt with once and for all. It is sadly going to be a cycle we find ourselves in time and time again, because this is after the cops were found not guilty, the ones who beat Rodney King to death. I don't know. I think it even hits even harder. Sadly, Rodney King isn't alive anymore, so I think that makes it. I don't know. Makes the story hit even harder now. I don't know. I don't know why. Like my brain immediately goes there being like, well, he passed away. Wasn't it like? Maybe it was a lot longer than I thought it was, but I think it was only like a few years ago he passed away, if I'm not mistaken. So it just hits a little different with him not being in the world. I don't know. Once again, that's just me. I don't know if anyone else feels that way. But Ben's in this interesting situation. He's the son of a shoe store that's run by a Korean family. The father, Jin, is played by C.S. Liu. I was about to say C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lee, which I'm blanking on his character's name, but the thing I best know him from is Dexter. I've seen him more recently, even though it's something from a few years ago. He's in one episode of Warrior, specifically episode 5 of season 1. Obviously, it's a great episode. Like Warrior has those standout episodes that are really dope in like their execution, and that just happened to be one of those episodes, and he was in it. But anyway, I'm going on a whole tangent, but that was kind of dope seeing him be the dad. But yeah, it's a Korean-run family business, and they're kind of not doing so well, and it's this division that exists between his view on he looks at black teens and just black people in general as kind of thugs, because for him, he has this perspective of like, right, the cops are on the right. Like the fact is like, oh, this kid comes here and he's just looking, and it's like, there's a lot of prejudice and racism kind of built into that, and he doesn't realize and it's something Ben brings up later on. Like, if you took time to listen to each other, you realize there's so many different parallels, that there is still that same thing, like the black experience, or even being like, a immigrant to this country, like how many like parallels that the way this country treats you is, not trying to equate everyone's struggles to being exactly the same, but there is overlap in that struggle in this situation. But it's like, because this is a situation that caused so much division, because there's so many Asian, I'm sure maybe this is, because I think they're specifically in a very like Asian, like orientated side of the town. But like, the fact is that at one point Ben's outside and he sees these shop owners outside, got guns locked and loaded on top of their stores, ready to defend it. And when they look at Ben, they kind of give it a nod, like, okay, like we Koreans got to look at, like us Asians, we have to look after each other. So it's kind of, the sad thing is it divided, when such civil unrest, it's hard to come together in those moments, because moments like that divide. And when the systemic stuff keeps you even further divided, it's hard to see in a situation like Jin and Dwayne, how much they have there's so much overlap in between them that there is a lot more common ground than either one of them is necessarily willing to 100% see. I mean, Dwayne is willing to kind of give more of an olive branch than Jen is, but either way, the family's in, like I said, the family business isn't what they want it to be. They didn't really cover this too much in the story, but it is kind of thrown in there that their mom is kind of, I guess, like wants her portion of the business. Maybe she has plans of like what they should do with the business, but the dad is stubborn. Like, I don't know if their parents are divorced or whether it's just like they just don't, and they're still together, or they just don't see eye to eye business wise. But they were kind of planting this seed in the story of like, right, she like wants to kind of take everything. So I guess she probably wants to take it and sell it to try and make some money. But for Jen, it's like, this is our family legacy. This store is something that he came to this country to start. And it's like, I want to pass it down to my children, but they both have two different goals. The person Ben is going to join the Navy, right? Or was it like the Marines? I think it was the Navy. Might have been the Marines. He's going to join some branch of the military, and Sonny is starting his own shoe business with Dwayne. Dwayne's going to come up with the designs, and because Sonny's like, the way my dad, like, you're a mom and pop shop that can't survive with all these other big competitors around. You're just not going to be able to survive, sadly. So we got to find a niche market, and for him, it's like this side hustle. He can build it out, and that way, it's like I can keep our family going. It's not like I'm doing this just to be selfish. I'm doing this so that our family does have a legacy. But because if we keep going down your way, because his dad's stubborn and like he wants things his way, and he's going to keep going down that way, even though it's showing like, right, the profits aren't there, the profit margins aren't there for us to keep this up. This isn't sustainable, and we'll eventually lose it. The fact of the matter is, the LA riot situation, Jen ultimately ends up dying, and both of his sons try to run the business after he died to keep him honored. But I think Magic was saying like eventually, I don't know if they had to sell it or whatever, just because they couldn't keep up. But yeah, another powerful element to this episode is the whole situation with, once again, this episode in itself really leans into the fact is that we haven't dived into it too much. We're getting bits and pieces of it here and there. I mean, obviously we have mainly, because especially with Ben, we mainly gotten it through the Addison side of things, but it's the whole element of the team isn't exactly the same because a lot can happen in those 3 years and they've all gone through something. And yes, we focus on Addison. We've gotten a better idea of everything she went through. But even then, like, there's probably more to it that we haven't really gone over. But this was Magic's episode for us to understand what he's kind of going through. We still haven't fully touched on everything Ian or even Jen have gone through. What this, like, you know, the year after Quantum Leap was shut down to them kind of restarting it after finding Ben, what that year was like for them. I mean, what that 2 years was like for them before it was shut down, and then that year after, like, you know, because we find out Magic is with Beth, Janice's mom, and she's kind of worried about Magic because of what he went through with all of this, because it's like, okay, which, you know, it's, you know, there's so many different layers about Magic and Janice and Beth being together. I'm sure the whole treatment of Janice kind of played a role in like, okay, like, you know, probably Magic kind of put in a good word to kind of let her get that NSA job or kind of nudge things along. And maybe it's just like, right, you know, she's connected to this world because of Al, and so she saw what this kind of did to Al, what it did to Sam, and, you know, she doesn't want and she saw what it did to Magic, and she doesn't want him to kind of, you know, go backpedaling down that dark path like when they thought Ben was dead. But he's like, no, I got this under control. But when Dwayne was on his own because because Jen refused to let him into the store when they boarded the place up, kind of defending the place, Dwayne was running from the cops. It's like, yeah, you're a black teen, like, out and about. They're going to assume the worst about you, especially at a time where the city's literally burning. Everyone's, you know, looting, and there's so much destruction around. Even like, I believe she's maybe a nurse, the woman that's with them this episode, who's the single mom trying to get back to work so she can help look after her children because she was just buying some new shoes to kind of help her through her like shifts. But then it turns out like, oh, cool, my car got bombed. It's like, yes, like everyone's angry. I get it. I'm angry too, but you don't see me going around burning people's cars for no reason. Like I've never done anything to anybody. And that's the sad thing. And that once again, that isn't just this situation. We see that time and time again when riots pop up. What do people do? They submit. Like there is the peaceful protest that doesn't engulf like, oh, like when it comes to rioting, all the protesters, they're not all, it's people who are just douchebags are like, oh, here's a riot situation, I'm gonna take advantage of it. They're gonna use this situation as an excuse, but they're not there for reasons of like, oh, I'm here fighting injustice. I'm just doing a smash and grab. Like there is that portion of people. It doesn't encompass the entire protesting group, but it's that thing of just like, right, people take advantage of situations. But seeing that fear on Dwayne's face struck Magic to his core. And he had this beautiful moment with Jin when he opened up about, what was it, the long summer is what he called it? Or was it like the long black summer? I forgot what he called it. But it was a similar situation in 76. And he was on leave from like the Navy and he was with his friend. They were trying to do whatever they could to help out. And some cops stopped them, believing like, oh, you're black teens. There's no way you could have actually afforded this car. It's like in that moment, it didn't matter. They weren't willing to listen because they saw us as other. They saw us as something other, put us on our backs, like boots to our necks while the others beat on us with their batons. And they left us like trash in the street. And for Magic, that trauma resurfaced itself. In that moment because he saw Dwayne's face. And he's also dealing with the fact is that when Ben died, or everyone thought he died, and the Quantum Leap got shut down, Magic dove into alcohol. That was his way of dealing with things. And he's been sober like what I think like 12 days of a year he's been sober. Because even Beth showed up worried because she found an empty bottle, and he was like, I didn't have a sip. I found some old liquor or whatever, and like maybe any old liquor he had, he poured out. He's like, maybe that's someone else's bottle or something like that. Because she's like, I found it in our trash can. So she was worried that this whole situation might have sent him backpedaling. Because it's like, I get it, Ben's like a son to you. He's just like, I promise you we'll have dinner together. It's going to be okay. But all of this took its toll. And Jen was like, if you need us to, me and Ian, we can switch out whenever you need to. But for Magic, it's like, no, I made a promise to Ben. I'd see this through and I'm going to. And him and Ben had this beautiful moment where it's like, because Ben's like frustrated with everything going on. Like he understands the anger and frustration of the leap that's going down. And it makes him so frustrated because his own father not being in his life, there's underlining stuff there. So this whole thing with Jin kind of plays into that because he had yelled at his dad, which I love that he yells at his dad. He yells at Jin in Korean. He's like, and the only thing he took away from it, when did you learn how to speak Korean? It's like, really? That's what you're focusing on? But it's like, that frustration kind of came out there. Plus everything with him and Addison, which Magic's like, hey, if you want to talk about anything, I'm here. And he's like, I know, and if you need to talk about anything, and Magic opened up about his alcoholism, and he talks about what this all kind of he went through, and Ben said he took this moment to say, what my decision to leap, that was my decision, and I'm the one that kind of made my decision and kind of set forth everything. My decision and my choice should not be on you. That is me alone. You shouldn't have to bear the weight of my choices. So that is something that he's coming to terms with, and something like, he didn't realize, I think until last episode, until Addison like put him in his place and made him realize that he didn't realize, like, right, I haven't really taken the time to fully, I've been so caught up in my feels about it that I haven't taken the opportunity to be empathetic and understand fully where everyone's coming from, realizing what Magic went through. But he's like, we are a family, so like we got each other, Even at the end of the leap being like, it's going to be okay. And he looks at Magic because he's talking to the family, but he's also talking to Magic, who is his family, being like, we're going to be okay. And I thought that was beautiful. Because even the nurse had brought up a good point of like, yeah, you're so against Dwayne being here, but, and your kid's going out there trying to help Dwayne. What would you do? Like, she's also speaking as a single mother. Like, if you as a parent, what if like that's someone's baby out there like in danger and your son's wanting to help? What would you do? Like, wouldn't you feel the exact same way if the shoe was on the other foot? You'd want someone to help your sons, But because Sonny had gone off to try and get some supplies because they had no idea how long they'd have to be locked down, but because Dwayne was brought in, it shifted history, and so someone else was going to die, and that person that was going to die was Sonny, because sadly it gets into this heated argument between Jen and Dwayne, because Dwayne tried to come at it from a perspective of what was stolen from me. It sucks, but look on the bright side that everything that was stolen to was just material stuff. It sucks for your business, but at the end of the day, you still have your sons. That's still something valuable, that you still have your lives and your health. But Jen kind of went on this tirade about like, what do you know? You're just a hoodlum and stuff like that. But then Dwayne, which I didn't even talk about that, Dwayne is the actor who plays Eugene in Your Honor. So that I was like, that's super dope when he popped up in the episode at the beginning. I was like, he's most likely going to be a big part of this episode just because of that actor. So I just that was assumption on my part. But either way, he kind of went off on Jen because it's like, right, I'm like doing good in school. I'm like the top 5. I'm going to go to a really good college. The fact of the matter is, all you see is me. When you look at me, it's a hoodlum. The fact of the matter is, I have to live my entire life with that viewpoint on my back. Because even Magic touched on that conversation that, does happen in the Black community of, before your kids are out there in the world, you have to prepare them of like, yeah. Now the thing is, the reality is every cop going to treat you like shit because you're Black? No. I mean, in general, is every cop going to treat you like shit because you're a minority? No. But it's still something you have to be wary of, that there is going to be that prejudice as a cop where they're going to look at you a little differently. Not just them. Anyone's going to be like, like their own biases play a role in it. Once again, I'm not talking about everyone, but it is a systemic thing that you have to be weary of. You can't be blissfully ignorant like that's not that, that's not going to happen. Oh, that's a possibility. It's like, just because you have a generally positive experience with the cops doesn't, mean that's going to be applicable to all cops. Once again, not all cops are good, but not all cops are bad either. So that's something to keep in mind. And especially sadly in this situation, once again, this is a very systemic situation that boils over, and it's almost just like a lot of that prejudice is in their minds excusable because of the volley and the burning of the city. It gives them the excuse to be like, well, I already have this prejudice, and this situation feeds into the prejudice I have, and have that confirmation bias essentially with the situation. So either way, but circling back, the argument with Jen. Luckily Ben got in the way to stop it, but Jen had the gun. He heard someone coming through the back and shot without really thinking, and ended up being Sonny. Luckily, them all working together, they would get him to that ambulance and try and get him treated long enough so they can get into the hospital. Some cops roll up when they see Dwayne, I almost wanted to say Eugene, getting in the car. Just because it's a complicated thing, because that, like, his character of Eugene had his complicated relationship with cops in Your Honor. If you've seen it, you know. If you know type of thing, right? And they had their guns drawn on him, being like, get on your knees. But luckily, Jen was in the way, being like, you do your job. Your job is supposed to be protecting us, not attacking some kid who's done nothing wrong. So it's like, please just go do what you're supposed to do to protect the city and let me save my son's life. And so luckily they're on the way to the hospital, where Magic tells them like the future of what happens to the family. Sonny's going to be okay. The business works out. Their dad ends up being a major investor in it. After his time in the military, the person Ben is eventually comes back and becomes like the first CFO of the company. So it all works out across the board. So I thought that was just a beautiful thing of like, the story playing out okay for the family. There's a lot of issues that came up, but I think they eventually will be moving in the right direction. Jen grew and learned from this experience, because his anger and stubbornness got the best of him in so many regards. How he treated Dwayne, but also like leading to him shooting one of his sons. And it was this powerful ending from Magic's side of things, where he is calling Beth and is like, can we reschedule because it's like the anniversary of like the first date, and it's like, can we reschedule that? I'd like to, like, the dinner we were supposed to have. Can you come to a meeting with me because I need help? And I thought that was beautiful. It's not always the easiest thing to admit help. I think especially for someone like Magic, who is a soldier, like, oh, nothing's going to shake me. But even Ian and the others were scared, like, oh, this did shake you, this did rock you. But he's like, no, I'm okay, and ends up actually asking Beth because she was his rock during that time. It's like she pulled me up and she helped me through everything, and she's the reason why I'm able to be sober like I've been for nearly a year. So turning to people when you need help is not always the easiest thing, which parallel between what was going on back then during the LA riots with Jin and his family, and also what's going on with Magic. Obviously, like, that parallel is meant to be there. So what was also interesting too, where I talked about kind of Magic's own guilt about the whole Ben situation, it comes up with Ian. I might have brought this up at the end of episode 1, but I might have talked about it more in episode 2. I don't remember, but I definitely distinctly remember I felt like Ian is pushing even further with this whole thing, because now Ian blames himself most, and that comes up because Ian's like, I'm the reason why our team is in this situation. Ben started leaping in the first place because of future me, and now the dominoes have fallen out. And look at our team. Our team is like an emotional wreck. I put us in this situation, and Addison's like, it's not your fault. And the fact of the matter is, we just all kind of have to accept the new reality of our new dynamics and just where things currently stand. Because you could tell it was hard for her to walk away from Ben. She's like, right, I want to give Ben his space. Like, I owe him that much. But it was hard for her to walk away, being like, once again, 95% of his leaps, she's been by his side for every one. The only one she wasn't there at all in any part was the one from the beginning of this season in episode 1. So that was just kind of a powerful moment between Ian and Addison. I thought that was kind of dope too. Well, I also think it's interesting. Once again, it's that little bit. It doesn't come up. It comes up every once in a while because he mentions it last episode of I got this bounty hunter and her boyfriend back together. In this episode, it's like, oh, how did you know? The nurse was like, oh, how did you know to hand me this? It's like, oh, because I've been in a hospital once or something like that. And I was like, right, you were. It was a medical episode. And once again, it comes up every once in a while, but it's like, right, Ben learning from previous experiences with previous leaps. It comes up once again, just small little conversation bits. Sometimes it can have massive effects, but other times it's just a nice little dialogue reminder of like, yeah, this experience has kind of helped me in this regard, even if it's in like the tiniest way. So just little stuff like that. But then we also have Ben's leap at the end of the episode where he ends up being like a buddy of his is like, oh, like there, you got to find this thing before it's done. The guy's name is Lawrence and he dies. That's pretty rough. Like Ben's never been in a situation like he's been in like, oh, a medical situation where it's like, oh, this person's hurt. You got to like act immediately. One of his leaps began with him delivering a baby, if I remember correctly too. That might have been the same leap. That might have been a different leap. I don't remember. I want to say that was the same leap. I can't remember. But yeah, like I think this is the first time Ben's ever been at the beginning of a leap and someone died immediately. It's like, damn, that sucks. Like I was brought here to help with something, but I couldn't save this person's life. That sucks. Because you don't get a do-over with that. It's just like that person, Lawrence, died, and now you just, I mean, hopefully maybe Ben's able to get medical help beforehand, but it feels like that's kind of definitive of like Lawrence is dead, but maybe that's not the case. So what that leap is going to be, we'll ultimately have to wait and see. There's also a little thing I also want to talk about before I end this as well. When the computer was kind of a little scrambled because history had changed and Ziggy had to kind of readjust because Dwayne being brought into the store and everything. I thought for a second, I was like, oh, are we implementing that storyline where there's an issue with the chip that Ian got? I thought maybe this had something to do with that, but still could. But once again, last episode, they talked about dealing with it, at least temporarily, by putting up a firewall. So I was it was mainly about Ziggy like trying to recalibrate everything because of the changing of history. but in that such a drastic way, and it drastically changed things to some extent. But I was curious, and like I said, if that was going to be something connected to Rachel's boss, but it seemed like it wasn't. Still could have turned out to be later on that like it played some minor role in it or some background role that we're just not aware of in this episode. We'll ultimately have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.